Welcome to the Supabase Marketplace app series, brought to you in partnership with Supabase, where we are going to build a real-world marketplace application with Supabase and SwiftUI. In this series, we are going to walk through everything from authentication and setting up databases to creating listings, as we can see here in our feed, and managing user profiles as well. You'll get a complete overview of how all of the moving parts work and connect, and use the same principles utilized in real production apps like Amazon and Facebook Marketplace. We'll be using Supabase for our backend with Postgres, Auth, Edge functions, database tables, all in one platform. And as you can see on the front end, we'll be building a beautiful user interface with SwiftUI completely from scratch. That's going to allow users to buy and sell listings, manage transactions, and user profiles. By the end of this series, you're going to have a complete foundation you can use to launch your own startup or side project powered entirely by SwiftUI and Supabase to create a beautiful, high-functioning marketplace application. In this video, we are going to get started by setting up our Xcode project and getting started with building out the user interface for our application, starting with the authentication flow for creating and authenticating users. So I hope everyone's ready to get started building out this awesome application. Go ahead and get Xcode opened up and create a new project, and we're going to create our folder structure and then get started with the code. So to kick things off, we are going to set up the folder structure for our project here. So make sure you guys just copy this. It just helps keeps your files organized, and as the project grows larger, you're going to be grateful that you did this. So I have an app folder where I put the app file. I have a components folder where we will put some reusable design components. We have a core folder where all of our features will go. And then within that, we also have a root folder, which is where our content view exists. So this is always going to be the root view of the application. We have an extensions folder. This will come into play later. We just have an extension on a string here to detect if we have a valid email or not. And we have a resources folder with a couple assets. You guys could just go online and download some pictures of some listings or listing items like running shoes, iPhones, etc. And then we have a utils folder with constants and our data models as well. So when the time is right, we will come back to these files. You guys don't have to worry about them now. Just make sure you have your project structured this way in your project navigator. So to start things off, guys, we're going to build out our authentication screens. So we're going to build out this login and sign up page. So from within our core folder, we're going to go to the features folder and we are going to make an authentication folder. And here we are going to make a couple other subfolders. We're going to make one for service, one for our views, one for our models, and another for our view model. Or manager, we could call it. And within our views folder, let's go ahead and create two SwiftUI views. We're going to create a SwiftUI view that's going to be our login view. And we will then create a registration view. And we are going to hop back into the login view and get started by building out this screen. So I'm going to start by pasting in a couple properties that we need. You guys can pause the video and type this out. I am going to be copy and pasting a lot of code here. I don't want to spend too much time building out the UI line by line. And if you guys want to access the full source code for this project and all of the other projects we have on YouTube, the link for this is in the description. And you guys can get access to everything we've done on YouTube and everything we will do in the future on YouTube. We have a ton of content here and you can access all of that source code for a one-time fee of $59. So the link for that is in the description. Make sure you check that out. So let's hop back into Xcode, guys, and we are going to start building out this view. So this needs to be inside of a navigation stack, and within that we are going to have a VStack. And we're going to place a spacer there, and then we are going to place this Supabase image. So this is in my resources file. You guys could go and simply download this icon from the internet or replace that with any icon you want. I'm going to add another spacer there. This is obviously also part of the source code if you guys want to access that. So next up, we are going to create 2 text fields within another VStack. So below that image, I'm going to paste 2 text fields in here, and that's going to be for my email and password. And then we are going to create a button to log our user in. And that's what that button is going to look like right there. Pretty simple and pretty straightforward. And next up, we are going to create a navigation link so that we can navigate over to our registration view. So underneath that last spacer, I'm just going to go ahead and paste in this navigation link for our registration view. And we also need to place a divider here. Perfect. So guys, we notice if we click on this, it will navigate over to our registration view. So pause the video, type that out, or access the source code. You guys should be able to build that out on your own. It's pretty simple, straightforward SwiftUI. Next up, we're going to jump into building the registration view. So I'm going to command click into that, and we'll get started with this. So we'll start by pasting in all of the properties that we are going to need here. We're going to need a dismissal property, email, username, password, confirmed password, a Boolean to determine if the passwords match, and an isLoading property to manage loading state. Now I'm just going to get the registration view opened up here so we can see what that looks like in the completed application. So let's go ahead and start building this out now, guys. We are going to be within a VStack here. We don't need to be inside of a navigation stack because the login view is the root. And we're going to start by adding a spacer, our Supabase icon image, and another spacer. Next up, I'm going to add a VStack for all of our text fields. So we're going to have a VStack spacing of 8 pixels, and I'm going to start with the email and password. So let me grab that and pop it right in there. Basically, the same exact thing as what we had in the login field or screen. And next up, we are going to have this field here. This is going to be a ZStack that asks the user for their password, and it's going to have a check mark or an X image on the trailing edge to determine if the passwords match or not. So here's what that's going to look like in the completed app. As I start typing in the confirm password field, you'll notice that the passwords do not match, so they're both X's there. And once they do match, it automatically changes to 2 green check marks. So very nice feature to have there to help make sure that your user confirms their password correctly. So underneath that, I'm going to copy and paste a very similar field for confirming our password. You would ideally want to make some sort of reusable component for all of these fields here. We have a lot of copy and pasted code, but once again, that's not the point of this tutorial. Next up, all we need to do is create our sign up button and our button here to pop back to our root navigation screen of our login view. So underneath that last ZStack, I'm going to paste in our sign up button. And then after that spacer, we're going to have a divider. And we are going to have a button to dismiss this screen, which is going to look like this. Already have an account, sign in, and this will be a button with our calling our dismissal action. So if you guys remember, we created that up at the top here. So I'll scroll back down. When we click this button, we just dismiss that screen to head back to our login view. So let's go back to the login view and just make sure all of this stuff looks good. And that will pretty much wrap it up for the UI. So we go here, it navigates to our sign up screen. We already have an account. We go back to our sign in screen. So that's working beautifully. And our UI for our authentication flow is already complete. Hopefully that wasn't too fast for you guys. Like I said, I didn't want to spend too much time writing all of this out line by line. It's really simple SwiftUI, and you guys can pause the video step by step and type it out or access the source code, like I said. So now we can actually start getting into the fun stuff with implementing our authentication service and functionality. So the next step here is going to be to set up our authentication in the Supabase dashboard. So you guys are going to want to head to supabase.com, create an account or sign into your account, and we're going to go here and create a new project. This is going to be called Supabase Marketplace, and we're just going to create a password, and we're going to say create new project here. So here's our project. Once you guys have done that, we're going to go to this left panel, and we're going to go to the authentication tab. So we are then going to go to sign in / providers, and you should see that email is already enabled. We're going to uncheck this confirm email field just to make things simpler, so that when we sign users up, we don't have to confirm an email. That way we can just create a bunch of test accounts. In a production app, you would probably want to make your users confirm their email just to make sure that the accounts are legit. Next up, we are going to go to our project settings, and we are going to go to our API keys here, and we're going to copy this anonymous public key. And then we're going to hop over to Xcode. And in your utils folder from the constants folder, you guys are going to want to create this constants enum with 2 static properties. And here, this is going to be our API key. Make sure you paste that in there. And then we need the project URL string as well. So let's go back to Supabase here. And I believe we can go to our project overview. Nope, let's go to project settings. Here is our project ID. So you guys are going to copy this, go back to Xcode, and you are just going to paste that right there. So it should be https:// your project key and then .supabase.co. So these are our constants that we're going to use to set up our Supabase client and securely communicate with our Supabase backend for all things Supabase related, like authentication, database updates, and things like that. So now that we have that, guys, we are going to go to our service folder, and we are going to create a new file. And we're going to hit next, and we are going to call this Supabase Auth Service. So we're going to say Supabase Auth Service, and we're going to create a struct here called Supabase Auth Service, and we are now going to initialize our Supabase client. So here's what that's going to look like. I'm going to paste that in here. We're going to create an instance of our client, and then we are going to initialize our client like this. We do need to now download the Supabase Swift package. So we need to download the Supabase dependencies so that we can successfully utilize their code from within our Xcode project. So in order to do that, we are going to create a new Swift package. So go to File, and then we are going to say Add Package Dependencies. And I already have this dependency in my recently used. So it's supabase.swift. You guys can simply Google this package URL. It's github.com/supabase/supabase-swift.git and paste that up in the package URL field to get the Supabase Swift package. We're just going to say add package there. And we're going to let that do its thing. And we're just going to hit add package. And we should notice that this package dependencies are now populated in our left panel there. And then we are going to hop into our main target. So if you click your project name, go to your target and go to the general tab, we now need to make sure that these frameworks are linked to our project or our target here. So let's just go ahead and highlight all of these, hit add, and link them to our project. Now we should be able to go to our Supabase Auth service and import Supabase now. And we see that code, those errors should resolve themselves. Let's go ahead and hit Command B to build our project just to make sure that successfully imported the library and everything is working with our package dependencies. And this is what we need to do to initialize our Supabase client, and our build succeeds. So that's great. So guys, we're going to have a few functions here. I'm going to copy and paste them one by one and explain them as we go. So the first one we're going to have is to sign our user in. So we're going to have a sign in function with email and password. It's going to be async throws, and it's going to return a string. So we're going to get a response from the client by saying client.auth.signin with that email and password, and we're going to return the user ID we get back from that. So next up, we're going to have a function to sign out, like this. So that will sign our user out. And we're also going to have a function to get our current user session. So this is going to essentially check to see if we have a user that is currently logged in. And it's going to just say, let Supabase user equal try08 client.auth.session.user and return the user ID from that session. So next up, we'll type this one out together. We need a sign up function as well. So it's going to be very similar to our sign in function. So we can copy and paste that, and we're just going to call it sign up. We need an email, password, but we also need a username. So this is going to be for our actual user data. When we sign a user up, we need the username that they give us back from this form. So we're going to replace client.auth.signin with client.auth.signup with an email and password. And we're going to grab the user ID from that. We're going to say let user ID, and it's going to equal this response.user.id.uuid string. And for now, we'll just return that user ID. Eventually, once we set up our database tables, we will upload this user data to a Supabase database table. That process is different from authenticating our users, and we'll cover that later. So I'm just going to add a comment here that says upload user data here. Okay. So that's pretty much it for our auth service. Now we are going to inject this auth service into an auth manager so that we can consume that from the auth manager and ultimately call these functions from that manager to handle our authentication functionality from within the application. So let's go to our manager folder, and we're going to go here and create a Swift file, and this is going to be called Auth Manager. So here's what this is going to look like. It's going to be an observable final class Auth Manager, and we are going to inject our auth service like this. We're going to say private let auth service be of type Supabase auth service, and we're going to write out an init block like that to initialize that with our Supabase auth service, and we can give this a default value. Ideally, guys, you would want to implement a protocol-oriented service here so that you could pass mocks in that both conform to that protocol. We could potentially do that later on. So next up, guys, we just need to implement our functions that come from this service. So here's what our sign-in function is going to look like. So we need to create a current user ID property and an authentication state that manages whether or not our user is authenticated or there's an authentication error, things like that. So let's go ahead and do that really quickly. So in our model folder, we are going to create an auth state enum. So I'm going to say next with a new Swift file, and we're going to call this auth state. And this is going to be a pretty simple enum. We'll go ahead and paste that in here. It's just going to contain the different potential authentication states. We are either authenticated, unauthenticated, or unknown. So it's going to start off as unknown, and then we're going to run some sort of check using the Supabase service to see if we're authenticated or not. Okay, so back in our auth manager, let's go ahead and create a property for that. So we're going to go here and say var auth state is going to be equal to or of type auth state, and it's going to start off as unknown, right? And then we're going to have a current user ID property as well. So let's take a look at what we have here now. So when we sign in, we are going to say the current user ID is equal to try await auth service.signin. So we are calling that auth service.signin function that we built out in our Supabase auth service. If that succeeds, we know that our auth state is authenticated. If it fails, we know that we have an error, and we could potentially handle the error there later on. And here we'll just print out our auth state if that comes back correctly. So next up, guys, let's implement our sign out function. So here we call our auth service.signout. We have our current user ID that we will ultimately set to nil, and our auth state will be equal to unauthenticated, right? And then we're going to have another function to refresh our user. So here, this is going to simply be a function that checks to see if we're logged in or not. So this is how we're going to keep our user logged in throughout the lifecycle of the application. And if they relaunch it and they never signed out, we will make sure that we keep that user logged in. So let me go ahead and fix this really quickly. So we're going to call this refresh user function. It's going to try and get this user session ID. And then if we have that user session ID, we'll say that our auth state is authenticated and our current user ID is equal to that user session ID. If something goes wrong, for whatever reason, we'll just put the auth state in the unauthenticated state and say that our current user ID property is nil. And last up, we are going to add our sign up function here. So I'm going to paste this in. It's going to be sign up with email, password, username, and we'll say our current user ID is equal to the result of this. And then if that works, our auth state is authenticated. So the separation of concerns here is important to understand, guys. Our auth service is only responsible for communicating with our Supabase backend, right? And we could potentially introduce different auth services. Like if you wanted a Firebase auth service, you could do the same thing. You just want to keep your auth service responsible for that thing only, communicating with your backend service or your authentication service. This auth manager is responsible for implementing that service and then updating some sort of state in our application so that we can correctly update our UI and show the correct interface based on that authentication state. So let's see if we can go ahead and do that now. So inside of our root folder, we are going to, let's go to our app folder and go to the app file, and let's create this auth manager. We're going to say @state private var auth manager is equal to our auth manager. And we are going to add this as an environment property on our content view. So now that we have that set up on our environment, let's go to our content view and let's create that environment property. So we're going to go to content view and create an environment property for authmanager.self private var auth manager. And we're going to go to our content view on our preview and set that environment object as well. Ideally here, you would be able to pass in a mock service, but we haven't set that up yet because when your previews are running, you don't want to be constantly contacting your production API. It's better to build out a mock service, but like I said, we might do that later. So next up, guys, let's go and see how we want to introduce the application routing based on our auth manager auth state property. So we are going to create a switch on this auth manager auth state. So let me just go ahead and cut out all of this code here. And let's just create a group. I'm going to say switch auth manager dot auth state. And we're going to go through all of our different cases. We'll say case authenticated, text main interface, case dot unauthenticated, unauthenticated. If we're not authenticated, we'll obviously just show our login view. In case for unknown, we're just going to show a progress view to say, hey, we're trying to figure out what the auth state is of the application, right? So let's go ahead and run the application really quickly, guys. And we should be launching directly to the content view. And we should notice that that takes us over to our auth or login view because the auth state in the application is currently unauthenticated. So, or actually it's just going to be a progress view because it's going to be unknown. We haven't called any of the functions to check to see if we're logged in. So really quickly, we should just see a progress view showing up here, right? So what we need to do is back in our content view, we are going to add a task to this group. So we're going to say .task await auth manager .refresh user. So if we go back to this function by command clicking into it, this is going to try to get our current user session. If it's there, we know we're logged in. If it's not, we know we're not logged in, right? So let's go back and see, or run this again and see what happens there. And let's let our application run. And perfect, it takes us over to our login view. So the idea behind this, guys, is when we hit login with the correct data in our password and email field, it will try to log us in with Supabase. And if it's a success, it will update our authentication state to authenticated, and it will automatically reroute us to this main interface. So that's the idea behind that. So let's go ahead and see if we can sign up with a user. We need to implement this auth manager inside of our login view and sign up view as well. So let's go back to our views and let's copy and paste this line of code here. Go to our login view and we're going to paste that up at the top. And we are going to go to our registration view and paste that up at the top as well. Perfect. So now we have access to our auth manager everywhere in the application. That's the beauty of using environment properties here. Now, if you guys are at all confused in terms of how the app architecture is working or how all of this SwiftUI app flow stuff is working, definitely go ahead and check us out at appstuff.io. We have a massive sale going on right now at the time of filming of this video for Black Friday. And we have a bunch of professional courses with like these pro app clones that teach you guys how to do all of this stuff from scratch with building out awesome app clones like Instagram, Airbnb, Threads, TikTok. And we also have Pro Plus apps that are continuations of most of those pro app clones that take things to an entirely different level and show you how to build production-ready applications. And they include things like unit testing, performance optimizations, and more advanced app architecture. So make sure you guys check us out at appstuff.io. You can become a member here with us to access all of that content. So you get access to thousands of dollars worth of material for a low monthly cost of $49 a month or a yearly cost of $299 a year. And if you want unlimited lifetime access to everything that we will ever release in the future and everything that we currently have on the website, you can become a lifetime member here with us. And the Black Friday deals are insane, guys. You get 30% off all of that stuff. So make sure you check that out. So let's go back to Xcode here. And now that we have our auth manager implemented everywhere on the environment, we are going to go all the way down to the bottom and we're going to create a private extension here on our registration view. I like to add functions to extensions. I like to keep the view body like just that, properties and the view body. And then I add everything else like computed properties and functions to a private extension on that file. So let's go ahead and see what we got to do to sign up. It's going to be pretty straightforward. We're just going to have a sign up function. It's going to initiate a task. It's going to set the isLoading property to true. It's going to call our authmanager.signup function, and then it's going to set isLoading to false. We're also going to have a form validation property here, guys, in our private extension to determine whether or not we have a valid form. So we're going to want to make sure our email is a valid email and that our passwords match and that our username.count has at least one character. So the extension for this isValidEmail exists in our extensions folder. You guys could simply Google a regex string or use ChatGPT to generate this for you, or you could pause the video and type this out. That just might be kind of annoying with this really ugly regex string, but this essentially just determines if we have a valid email or not. So that's our form validation. And on our button action handler, we're going to say sign up. And then we're also going to add some form validation here, like this. So we're going to go here and say that our button is disabled if the form is not valid, and that our opacity, if the form is valid, is 1.0 on the button, and if not, it's 0.5. So next up, guys, let's go back to our login view and do basically the same thing. So we're going to go to login view, and we are going to have these two properties in an extension. One sec, let me grab that all the way to the bottom, right above your preview. Make this extension. We're going to have a function to sign in. IsLoading will be set to true. We're going to await the sign-in process. IsLoading will then be set to false. And here is our form validation. We will add our form validation to our button and then call our sign in function. And that should be it for our authentication setup, guys. So now it's time to make the rubber meet the road and test this stuff out. So let's go ahead and run our application and see if we can actually sign a user up. So this will just be a test user to test our authentication. In the next video, we're going to go over how to set up all of our profiles and adding our custom user data, like things like the username, when the user was created, to a user table in Supabase. So I'm going to go ahead here and we're just going to say test@gmail.com, tester, and create a simple password. It needs to be at least 6 characters long. I just do 6 Qs. And we're going to hit sign up. And look at that. Absolutely incredible. It automatically reroutes us to the main interface of our application because we successfully signed up that user. So next up, guys, let's go back to our Safari, go to our Supabase dashboard, go to authentication, and we should see that user data in our authentication folder. So we see that we have our email, our provider, when the user was created, and when they last signed in. Perfect, right? For this video, guys, we'll just do a quick recap of everything we just did there and go over what we're going to do in the next video as well. So I'm going to hop back over to Xcode. So we got let's start with our Supabase auth service. So this file was responsible for communicating with our Supabase authentication API, right? That's all it does. It doesn't do anything UI related here. We then use dependency injection to inject this service into our auth manager. So this auth manager is an observable class, and it's responsible for implementing this auth service and all of the associated functionality. And then we have some UI related things here, or some state logic, right? We have this auth state and this current user ID property. And I actually don't think we need this. We can clean this up in the next video. Everything is routed through this auth state in terms of how our authentication or our application flows, right? If it's unknown, we show a progress view. If it's unauthenticated, we show the login view. If they're authenticated, we show the main interface, right? So when we sign in or sign up, we try to execute that sign up or sign in process. And if it succeeds, we update our auth state, right? Oops, let me fix that. And if anything fails, we're just printing out an error. And then when we sign out, we update our auth state to unauthenticated. And then this refresh user checks to see if we have a user logged in. So if I were to run the application again, guys, you should notice that it just jumps straight to the main interface. It's going to have a little loading indicator for a second, or it just instantly did it there, which is awesome. And it takes us right back to our main interface, keeping our user logged in unless they manually sign out. So if we go to our content view, we set this up on the environment, right? So that everything is routed through this auth manager in terms of how to update our application state. And here is where we switch through that state. So anytime that auth state changes, it will redraw our view and route us to the correct user interface. And it's all managed through this refresh user task. So this refresh user task tries to see if we're logged in or not. And if it is, we update our auth state going back down that chain that we just described or explained, and then it will correctly update our authentication interface or our app interface. So I know I kind of zoomed through that pretty quickly. If you guys want more in-depth breakdowns of that, once again, check us out at appstuff.io, where we do much more in-depth breakdowns in our Pro app clones and go even further beyond in our Pro Plus app clones. Like I said, these are production-ready builds that can handle millions of users, guys. I personally worked at Meta for about 2 years, and these are all of the same techniques used in big tech companies for how to build applications at a production level that can scale to millions of users. So in the next video, we're going to go over how to implement our user profile. And we're going to create this UI, go over how to sign out of our application, and create all of this user metadata with things like how many items they've sold, their total sales, their username, their email, their profile image URL, so on and so forth. So get excited for that, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.